So are we recording? Okay, got it. Okay, well, George, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Sales Transformation Podcast at long last.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. It's great being with you.
Yeah. We're here to talk to George, who's just brought out an amazing book, which I've enjoyed reading. But I think before we get stuck into sort of talking about the book, but actually hopefully on the broader topic of sales, because George has a huge amount of experience in the profession of sales over many years, which I think is going to be fascinating to hear. It would be great if we could just start with a little bit of history. George, would you mind sharing with the listeners a little bit about you and your career, how you got into sales maybe in the first instance, and then bring us up to date with what you're doing now?
Sure. I usually like saying that I have a 30 years work career, which is pretty much evenly split in 3/3. The first one was in sales, where I worked for Motorola, for Alcatel, for Vodafone. And I was in sales. I was a sales executive, but it was the mobile handsets
Yeah.
that I was selling at that time, not infrastructure. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but I like being transparent. It was years that sales was a lot easier. We were at that time we were buying market share. We didn't have KPIs like EBITDA, which makes things a lot tougher, right?
Yeah.
The second third was on sales training with Hathwaite, the British sales training company behind Spin Selling.
Yeah.
And the third one was on sales enablement, sales learning and development, and sales training with Ericsson.
Okay.
So I got back to telecom.
Yeah. How fascinating. Yes, you sort of returned a little to the roots in the telecom sector, but I know working more on the infrastructure side, I guess, with Ericsson than
Absolutely.
the mobile handset.
Absolutely.
Yes, but you said it. Selling was easy. I think you're probably pretty smart to choose a particular sector, which is probably going through an enormous amount of growth and seeing a lot of change and transformation in that mobile phone handset business over those years.
I think I would take this credit. you know, Phil, when I started working right after school, I graduated back in '89. The first couple of years I worked in the hotel industry.
Okay.
And actually I started working with Hilton Hotel. But when I saw and then I had to serve my military, and then it was 93, 94, and I saw this coming.
Okay.
And I chose to. I remember I left the hotel industry to join. I started with a mobile operator. At that time, it was STET, and it used to belong to Telecom Italia, STET Italy.
Okay.
And today it's called Wind in Greece. And I worked there. I think it must be the first time that I changed job, not for more money. I didn't join them for more money, but I saw what was coming, and I never regret it.
You never regret it. I remember it, just going back to the sort of personal experiences of mobile phones. And again, this may be showing my age a bit. I don't know who manufactured the sort of first It might have been Motorola. It's a huge chunky. It's like a brick.
Right.
Was it the Motorola product? I don't know if it
Uh,
was, because they had the beautifully elegant sort of flip phones or whatever they were
yeah,
called.
yeah. I think you're talking about the 5200. It was a bit curved in the back, and the SIM card was of the size of a credit card.
I don't
Uh,
remember that. Well, all I remember is that this particular phone, it might have predated the ones you're referring to, actually. It had a phone that you could put in your suit pocket. Yeah. But it had an antenna that came
right,
out, and it
right,
used to sort of pop out at the
right,
side.
right, right,
Yeah.
right.
So you try to be this cool kid on the block with the first bit of mobile technology, but I must have looked a bit of a prat, with this mobile phone in my pocket, wearing my jacket down because it was so heavy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but you could see how this was going to transform business from those early days. And
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, we've over the years done work with Siemens Mobile when they were making mobile phone handsets, and
Right.
in those early days. And of course, I think Nokia was the big brand at the time, and I think they had about 47% market share in their heyday, didn't they? And I think, yeah, Siemens then sold out to, I think it was a Taiwanese company.
I
Uh,
think so too. Bank.
yeah, yeah, I can't remember the name, but they sold out, and
Yeah.
we then sort of got back into the mobile phone area, working with Sony Mobile, and in fact, we had their top global account managers take part in our leading sales transformation masters program. But of course, they then transformed their business, and so on. So and, and we're now working with Vodafone in quite a major way on the apprenticeship program in the UK. So we've had lots of sort of connections over the years with that
Right.
telecom sector. It's a big it's gone through a lot of transformation. So I think your background is
Yeah. And
in
I
the
think
sector is really interesting.
I
Yeah.
think now that we got in the 5G era, uh,
Yeah.
things got very interesting. And then I think 6G, the Internet of Senses that is coming
Right.
kind of soon, will make
Yeah.
it even more interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so, okay, so now you're at Ericsson, and I believe that could you tell us a bit more about what your role is at Ericsson?
I would say that my role has two key pillars. One of them is, excuse me, to drive to lead globally, set to win.
Yeah.
Set to win is the Ericsson Sales Proficiency Program that we launched almost 3 years back,
Yeah.
and the other is sales delivery, sales training delivery,
Okay.
and coaching.
Okay. Cool.
Those are the two key
Those are
pillars
the two pillars,
of my role. So,
and you, yeah.
and I would say that recently, Phil, I put more time on the delivery side of things.
Okay.
We had some colleagues that are not with us, and one of them left the company and has been replaced yet, and
Yeah.
another is on a medical leave. So I had to put more time on
Okay.
on the training delivery.
So this is you yourself delivering the training
Yeah, absolutely.
across the globe for Ericsson. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I love about your book, and it comes through very, very strongly, and we'll talk about the book in a minute, is the sort of stories that you sort of share. Um, and uh, and I would imagine that you are a fascinating facilitator,
Thank
trainer. To be part of your program would be a great privilege, I would guess, given the amount of experience and also the sort of levels of reflection, that you show in the way that you write, and you sort of capture stories in a really nice way. So yeah, so it's very nice to have you here talking about the book. And we've been sort of, I guess, slightly aware that this might have been coming because, of course, you've been running blog posts on LinkedIn. And I guess that, a lot of the background, if not all, I don't know, to the book comes from the blog posts that you've been doing, and you've sort of captured those into your book.
You got it absolutely right. This is how it started. I had the blog
Yeah.
called George Talk Sales.
Yeah.
Now, every time I was posting, I had very encouraging feedback from friends, business
Yeah.
friends, acquaintances, telling me, George, this has to be a book one day.
Okay.
And it was something that I had in the back of my head for the last 8 years that I have the blog. But yeah, I didn't want Phil to do it on my own, really. And when the Sales Institute in Greece
Yeah.
told me that they were willing to endorse it,
Okay.
I thought that it is the time to go forward with
Yeah.
that idea, and I made it happen.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot, it takes a lot because, I mean, of course, I've written a book as well, and I know how hard it is actually to put pen to paper, because it's a kind of commitment. There's no going back when it's committed to print. And so there's all of that sort of soul searching that you go through to make sure that, you obviously want it to be good enough. You want people to enjoy it, to get engaged with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I know that it takes a big effort, and no, sort of congratulations on pulling it together. So let's perhaps go into some of the detail about the way in it. So it came as a consequence of being sponsored in part, by the Sales Institute in Greece. But could you just talk us through the way you decided to structure, the content, because you've broken it down into a number of distinct, I don't know if chapters is the right word. You've got 90 stories that form part of your book, but it's
Exactly.
grouped together in a number of sections. So I wonder if you can just sort of go through the way you
Yeah.
structured the book.
Well, I will go a little bit back
Okay,
to
cool.
the blog, because
Okay.
I had named the blog George Talk Sales, and the idea was to write about sales and negotiations.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I was writing about customer service, so there was another category that I was added there.
Right.
And then often I felt writing about leadership, about team working, about what we used to call soft skills, and now we call power skills. So I created another,
Yes.
naming it Power Skills, where I included all those there.
Okay.
But when we started working with the book with my editor, we tried to see things from the beginning, and
Okay.
try to categorize those stories in a better way.
Right.
And it was the time that the career and the workplace,
Yeah.
was changing big time with COVID, was taking some good part of it. I realized that a big part of my stories were about learning and development and training, not always related to sales training.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we reshuffled things, and we came up with sales, negotiations, power skills, learning and development, and career and workplace.
Right. But the target audience for your book, I imagine, are people who are in sales and sales leadership. Is that how you saw it? Maybe sales enablement as well.
I would say that this is the primary target group, but You read my book, and you probably noticed that I have 4 or 5 stories that I make strong references to scouts.
Yeah, I do. I've noticed you have a very, clearly that was interesting, seeing your reference to scouts and what you learn in the scouts camps. I think I went to scouts just for a few months because I was living abroad. Often we didn't have the same opportunity, that you do in the UK, for this. So yeah, this obviously had a big impact on you, and it still does, doesn't it? Because you
I
still, yeah, have
don't
connections there.
think I would do the same job if it wasn't the scouts.
Wow. Yeah.
It was the scouts, the first place that I started presenting to a big
Okay.
audience. I
Yeah.
started getting positive feedback
Yeah.
that reinforced the first good skills I had demonstrated.
Yeah.
They made me want to speak in public more and more.
And
And
what age are we talking about here, George?
my youth,
In your youth,
my teens,
in your teens, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And later, when the reason that I got into training, again, it was the scouts, the first place that I started delivering trainings, not trainings to kids, trainings to adults.
Okay. So you were training scout leaders, were you? Or when you talk about training, is that what you mean? You're sort
Yeah.
of
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a way, you sort of recognized this was well, you may not have recognized at the time, but you saw that training and development was something that you
That's
could do, and you learned those kind of skills right from an early age. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a very good point. Absolutely. And now the tricky, I would say, and an important thing writing the book or blogging is to refer to your scout experience or any other
Yeah. Yeah.
and um, on the surface looking irrelevant
Yeah.
experience and write your reflections in a way that they will make sense for
Yeah.
professionals, for sales professionals,
Yeah.
for corporate people. And I think this is the important thing. And hopefully, I managed
Yeah.
to get it right.
I mean, the other thing I've enjoyed about the book, and I think part of this is, the sort of diversity of thought process that feeds into stories that are relevant, for people who are, in anything in sales or leadership. But actually, I've really enjoyed you sort of the Greekness of your book as well, referring back to some of the great Greek philosophers and also athletes as well. You were naming people that that I wasn't aware of, obviously great athletes, but I'm afraid I've missed them. But I've enjoyed that, and of course I've enjoyed. You're clearly a tennis lover as well, I would say, as well as an MBA. I can see that you've picked up from these sort of different sources, and you're using the sort of stories. And I particularly enjoyed the Kyrgios references because he became a great fan of us in the UK at Wimbledon. With the way he plays
Yeah,
tennis, like a complete maverick. And I just love the way you talk about talent and skill and
isn't it a
training.
fascinating field that he make whatever he makes? I mean, he's not. He could be number one among the or
Yeah, he
but
definitely.
he, however, wherever he has succeeded is with no coaching, and and this is something so contradictory because we firmly believe in coaching and we
Of
firmly
course.
believe in support and work for sales
Yeah,
coaching. So here, this guy comes and tells you, no, my friend, coaching doesn't matter. Now,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident, and I really believe that if he had the right coach, he would have he would have succeeded a lot more things. his achievements would have been greater. But he's a very interesting man that he puts sometimes his joy
Yes.
and
Yeah.
above the achievements, and he wants to do things his way.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. And
peculiar.
I think part of being comfortable in your own skin, in whichever form that is part of being your sort of authentic self. And it's not really an issue of, if he really wanted to become world number one, perhaps he does, I don't know, but he probably just wants to play tennis as he does.
Exactly.
And
I don't have to respect that.
yeah, no, I watched the Kyrgios Tsitsipas game at Wimbledon. I don't know if you watched it, but
I,
it,
I I did watch it. It was
it was one of the best games of tennis I think I've watched. And I love the psychology of the game as much as the game itself. And Tsitsipas losing his cool. It was like a role reversal, wasn't it?
yeah. You're absolutely right. He got in Tsitsipas' mind.
He did. Yeah. Just and it's that underarm serve of his that really gets people annoyed. It's so funny. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I mean, in sales, I mean, you have the concept of the lone wolf and the team player and these various terms that come out of the challenger sale kind of book and so on. So he's definitely a lone wolf, and in that respect, but he's an enormously talented player. But no, I really enjoyed the kind of references you've made, and also coming back to some of the Greek philosophers. I mean, we have a beautiful pencil drawing of Aristotle in our office, done by a young artist, and it's beautifully done, fine artist. And I hadn't come across the filters. You talk about the Aristotle 3 filters, and that's great.
Socrates.
Oh, was that Socrates? I thought you said it
And
Aristotle.
actually, I think this is. I would put it among my favorite ones.
Was it Socrates?
Yeah, have a read.
Yeah. No, I've read about the 3 filters. Anyway, Socrates. I don't. That's still great.
I think I would put this among my
one of your favorites.
favorite.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad at least I picked out one of your favorites from the
You did.
even though I misquoted.
Did.
That's really interesting. But I think this, part of the art of selling is also a very strong connection with storytelling, and it's the way these, even involving sort of children's conversations that one senses when you read the book. It's a very personal journey that you've taken in some respects. I think we can all relate to those tough negotiations we have with young children, at a young age. And yeah, it's just very nicely sort of woven into, what I found interesting about the book before we perhaps hone in on specific areas was the fact that you can pick up a story and it doesn't take long to read. It's sort of, you can just pick up a story and it makes you think. It just makes you think, and that's great. It's not, but it's also, you can tell that it's written from a point of someone who knows an awful lot, about sales, and that sort of, I think, comes through. And fairly humble reflections as well. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've just enjoyed your contribution to the books on sales. It's very different, and it's very good. Yeah. Okay, so you've spoken a bit about the structure, and I think the listeners are probably getting a sense of the diversity of source material that sort of is feeding into, whether it's scouts or whether it's athletics, or whether it's personal experience of sales. Now I picked out quite a number of different sort of chapters, I suppose. I don't know if you call them chapters or stories that I have found interesting and fun. But I just wonder if there's any that you in particular feel, that for you have been, I don't know, maybe stories that have shaped you as a salesperson, or uh, yeah, just things that have really stood out that maybe it may be quite difficult for you to answer this question, but just interested to know, are there any particular things that have happened or stories that you feel made a big impact on you at a personal level?
Um, you know, um, Phil, the way I have written these stories is such that it's really hard for me to pick one. Of course, there are some that I particularly like the Socrates filters and how those apply in sales.
Yeah,
But the way I write it is I when you blog, and I told you that this started with
yes,
blog, you have to be consistent.
yeah,
So I, for me, that was one of the struggles I had. I had to be consistent, but at the same time, I had to write when there was something that would inspire me.
okay,
I wouldn't sit down one day to say, "Hey, it's the first week of the month, and I have to write."
yeah, yeah,
I never did that. I would watch some Netflix series like The Designated Survivor, and
yeah,
I would hear a line there that really would blow my mind. And I would stop the TV and I would take a screenshot, and 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 then the next morning I would write about it.
yeah,
I would reflect on it. I would watch a sports event that for some reason would trigger something, would make me think, and I would write about it. I
okay,
would, with some opportunity, remember something that happened to me when one of my stories is about selling encyclopedias
yeah,
when I was 18 years old before I studied. And
yeah, yes,
I
I
would write about it. So when you write like that, it's really hard to tell what are your favorites
yeah,
because
yeah. No, I agree. It's probably an
yeah, yes,
impossible thing. Yes, it was interesting, your story about encyclopedias, because it made me think about um, when I was very young. So I went straight from school into banking. And then from banking, I didn't last long in bank. I hated the big corporate machine, and it felt too much like public school to me. And so I then moved into sales, and I was lucky enough to, and I went into insurance, and it was it was a B2C world that I was in to begin with. So
Mhm.
it was a fairly tough sales environment. So similar to your encyclopedia um, experience, but I did have the most amazing manager, and you had the same,
Exactly,
your
exactly.
coach. And yes, I remember him telling me as a young kid at the time. He said that, and he drew a triangle on a bit of paper, and he drew the words thought, feeling, will. Thought, feeling, will. And this was after, a couple of weeks of very poor sales, efforts. And and he was beginning to say, you know, you're feeling let down, you're feeling as though you're not meeting your targets. And you just said, well, where do your feelings come from? And the feelings come from thoughts, he was saying. And then he then moved on to will. He said, well, where do you think will fits in? And he was basically arguing the case that do you want to be happy or do you want to be sad? Okay, so you start off there. So he's saying start off with your will, and that will influence your thoughts, and then that will influence your feelings. You know, don't let it get round. And that sort of, you know, these little things stick with you for a long period of time, don't they?
I I mean, this is luck, huh?
Yes.
To have such men in the beginning of
Yeah.
when you make your very first.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. And I mean the same chap that shared the triangle with me asked me to do something at a very young age. So I didn't have the scouts training that you had. So I wasn't used to presenting. And he asked me to go in and do a presentation to about 15 potential new recruits into the business because the manager had gone sick and I was the only one kind of around. And I loved the company so much and I respected him so much. I said, of course, I'd love to do it. And he said, fine, well, this is the sort of way we do it. I remember giving the presentation, and after about 10 minutes, someone got up and left. And then after about 15 minutes, about two other people just got up and left. And then by the end of it, there was no one left in the room. And he opened the door and came in, and I was mortified, and I was in tears, you know, based on this kind of experience. And he said, look, Phil, this is going to go one of two ways. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. You know, you need to make a decision. And he wasn't at all critical. He basically was saying, this is a massive opportunity for you to learn, you know, from this moment. And I'd never forget, that moment. And there's a lot of talk about psychological safety, you know, as a leader, creating space for people to thrive. And if you have a manager that's good enough.
Yeah, you remind me now. The very first corporate professional presentations of mine.
Okay.
It was 94. I had just joined the mobile operator that I was talking about before.
Yeah.
And me and a colleague of mine, we had to travel throughout Greece, gather we used to call them dealers. It was
Yes.
small POSs that were selling mobile telephony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was hundreds of them
Yeah.
all over Greece. So we would go to one town and we would gather the POSs owners and sellers from of the area. I would meet at a hotel, and I would have a 2-hour workshop where we would try to kind of train them on what mobile telephony is, how the mobile handset works, show them some new services, maybe share with them a couple of new television ads, TV spots that would come the next week and pump them up and motivate them, and
Yeah.
then have lunch or dinner together. You know, I was more or less the setup. So me, that I had the business academic background, I was not an engineer, to talk about how the mobile switching center works and
Right.
we were getting to such details. The idea was to educate them on mobile
Okay.
telephony. It was tough. So I studied a lot. And I started touring Greece for delivering these presentations. And I remember the first ones were delivered in Athens, in a nice hotel downtown. It was late. It was, I think it was before lunchtime. So at that time, the presentations were with either overhead
Oh,
projector
yeah.
or
Yeah.
with slide projectors.
Okay.
And those to show well, the room had to be a little bit dark. So we
Okay.
got the room very dark.
Yeah.
And I started speaking. And I was speaking in order to not to lose my thought threads. This is me. When I don't really have it, I
Yeah.
speak slowly.
Okay.
And at that time, that I had it. Now it's not as much, but at that time I was speaking very slowly.
Okay.
So I was trying to articulate well and
Yeah.
speak slowly with
Okay.
room dark.
Okay.
I tell you what, I didn't get anyone snoring or leaving the room
Right.
because there was lunch afterwards and everybody wanted to network with everyone. So,
Of course.
but
They stayed.
I
Yeah.
think the big motive was the networking and the lunch afterwards. I don't think everybody could really listen to me for 2 hours rambling and speaking slowly in the dark room.
In the dark room, that didn't work.
That was
Yeah.
ridiculous. But things got better little by little.
Things got better, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure now it's, sort of, you sort of really honed your your skills and subject matter. No, it's really, yeah, I love the way you tell your stories. And in fact, it's quite interesting because you also pick up on politics and when you talk about negotiating and Brexit. I mean, it was quite interesting to hear your views on Theresa May. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, this is interesting.
I don't know if I had your agreement on the specific topic, but it's
No, I think you
it's so
did.
difficult to tell, really.
No. It's really interesting. I mean, I think it's very good to pick up on topics like this because everyone can identify with it. And
Now you mentioned something. You make me think of something that maybe I should share with you.
okay,
Stories like this one, or the negotiation of the Greek Prime Minister
yes, that's right. And you related it back to the Greek.
about Grexit.
Yes,
That
exactly.
was possible to come at some point back in 2015. Those stories, when you publish a book in 2022,
Yeah,
are a little tricky. Are a little tricky because when you write and when you have a view of things and you express opinion, you express the opinion at the given time.
at a given time, of course. Yeah. That's a good
So
point.
that was something that so I had to change the introduction of those stories a little bit, going on a book mode.
Yes.
And I think this is something very important, someone reading the book to understand. And this is why I have the date that the story was written
Yes.
every time.
Well, I mean, the other thing that I found interesting is the dates, that you chart your, influenced by the pandemic, by Brexit,
Yeah, very important.
and so on. And actually that was interesting because it gives you a chance to see what your point of view was over a period of time.
Yeah.
And I think that it was like a diary, in a way, it's a bit like someone writing a diary about events that happened sometimes very early in your career and sometimes much, much more recent. And I think that context is interesting. You've charted historical events, and talk about it and sporting events, as well. So in that sense, your ability to sort of go back in history as well as, talk about the present, I think is also, it sort of makes for the richness and diversity of content, as well. So I think it's, yes, actually, I've just written down here, chapter 18, Socrates, triple filter. But I didn't have Aristotle, a triple filter down here. So I don't know why I said Aristotle. It's so funny. But I also like some of your, some of your points of view about what is, in inverted commas, perceived to be good about selling, like sales killer cliches. I think, is it story number 30
those?
that you've got? And I mean, another one I think we've all can relate to this is about getting these unsolicited phone calls from salespeople, even on New Year's Eve. I think you had, someone selling you a phone, just, oh my goodness, it happens all the time, doesn't it?
Actually, that was this is a story written by a good friend of mine and colleague.
Oh, okay.
And I hosted.
And you hosted it, but I'm staggered at sometimes,
Yes.
even getting a call on a Sunday morning from someone wanting to sell something to you. It's just like it it's just, you know, awful. Yeah. Anyway, so I think it's yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. Um, one of the questions I had, it's interesting because you talk about coaching earlier on, and you also talk about leadership in your book, and you talk about leading self and leading others, as two themes. But you didn't mention coaching in there. And I just wondered whether there was, maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed it, but you talked about leadership, but I was interested in whether or not you had a point of view about leader as a coach at all. You talk about, you first of all got to lead yourself, and then you've got to lead others.
Right.
And of course, you've taught. I know that you feel that coaching is critical, but I just wondered, perhaps I missed it in the book, but I just wondered whether coaching was a theme that is
I,
sort of part of leadership or not. But I just interested to hear your point of view on it.
I absolutely feel I believe in coaching very much. I'm
Yeah.
a coach myself.
Yes, I know you are.
My coaching is focused on sales and
Yeah.
and negotiations, which is my
Yeah.
expertise. But yeah, I'm a coaching believer. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, in one of those stories, I'm talking about, and this is one of the Scout references,
The Scout reference.
because I recall the coaching I had from my
From your
patrol leader
patrol leader.
when
Okay.
I was
Perhaps
12
I'm just
years when I was 12
12
years.
years old.
Yes, yes.
Well, you're very fortunate. I don't think I had any coaching. I went to boarding school at 9 years old. My parents were living abroad, so I didn't have much parental coaching per se. Um, and so, yes, I had to learn very quickly, when I was out in the big wide world later. So I didn't have that sort of channel that you obviously had. Um, you mentioned, you reference sometimes the APS, the Institute of Professional Sales, and you also make commentary on obviously Huthwaite and spin selling so if you were looking at the state of sales at the moment as a profession, what's your point of view? How have you seen it sort of change over the years, and where do you see it going?
Something that I have been upset about all those years is that people still in 2022 can study marketing, can study business administration, and then specialize in marketing or finance, but sales is not really there.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if we really look into some programs of some universities, we might find some sales relevant programs, but even though must be so limited.
Yes, it is limited. I mean, from the research that we've done, there are about 110 universities in America now which are offering an undergraduate sales degree. But when you look outside of America, there's very little focus on it. I mean, the UK is slightly different because of some of the government initiatives that have happened here.
When I started in America back in the late 80s, I majored in business administration.
Okay.
And the only sales, it was some principal in sales course offered.
Yeah. I know.
I'm sure things changed.
It's changed, but it's, I mean,
so few institutes like APS, but sorry, now it's
The ISP, Institute of Sales.
ISP,
Yeah,
the ISP today, where Andy Huff and his team has made some tremendous work, or the Institute of Sales in Greece,
in Greece. Yeah,
that his president Antonis Potamitis have done a great work, and I'm sure there are many others that I just didn't have the
yes,
luxury of collaborating with them. They do some great work and they contribute in big
yeah.
for giving the credibility to sales professionals that deserve.
Yes, it is. I mean, I mean, I see that education needs to play a big role in this, because the institutes on their own, are great, and they can set up ethical frameworks for sales and some degree of sort of authentication. But until universities fully embrace sales as well, but it's a very long-term challenge, this, because faculties need people who are expert in sales to be part of it, and many of the faculties in business have no knowledge of sales, and they've got no capability of delivering content and relevant content for people involved in sales. So it's a massive journey, but I do believe that, in spite of all the things that UK is not particularly good at doing, it is setting a new standard. And I share with you completely the same point of view about sales being the forgotten profession in many ways. But yeah, the UK government has sponsored the concept of apprenticeships, and apprenticeships are linked to degrees, even postgraduate degrees. And I was just looking at, now we have a relationship with Middlesex University, as you probably know.
I know, of course.
Yeah, we have well over 700 students now completing undergraduate sales degrees, as well as the exec master's program. I think we've got 200 or 300 people.
Great. I understand you do a great work there with SAP, right?
Yeah, SAP is one of our, we've now got a lot of big corporates now coming through the UK apprenticeship program, like Amazon Web Services are about to have 30 new students starting on the undergraduate course, Microsoft, sort of Verizon, just on the tech side, but it's across all industry sectors. And what's interesting has been the popularity. I think we got 35 new enterprise accounts last year, of people wanting to go on, to have their people come on the program. So that tells you there is a demand. There is a demand out there. So I think, but it needs to be much bigger than just what the UK is doing. It needs to be a global phenomena. And so, yeah, it's going to take a while, but it's interesting. How many people do you need to start a movement? And then how many people do you need to be involved in transformation? And to start a movement, I think you need two people. Yeah, you need someone with an idea and then someone to follow the idea. And it's that, that first follower concept. I just love that. The first follower is so important. But to get transformation is a much bigger, McKinsey have said you need 7%, of people in a company to engage on an idea, then you can get transformation. Only 7%.
7%, okay.
But in sales, if you look at transforming the sales profession, that's a lot of people. So it's working with people like yourself and sort of supporting the notion of professionalizing sales, as working with the academics. It's we've actually got 6 of our master's students are now doing a doctorate in sales.
All right.
You know, little acorns. You know, a
Fantastic.
tree will come. So I'm not using this to promote the masters or anything, but I'm just saying that, you know, that you've seen sales change. I loved your sort of references to spin selling. Of course, you must have very close connections with Huthwaite and so
Of course.
on.
Of
And they
course.
were sort of
That, that was a huge part of my career.
yeah. And of course, the work that Neil Rackham did in those very early days was amazing. The proper research.
Amazing man.
Yeah, he really is. And yes, I think you know, your credentials, I think, as someone who's a thought leader on sales is very much there, given your background with Huthwaite and also your sales experience and now what you're doing at Ericsson, which is great. Well, what can I say? I think we're probably reaching towards the end of our podcast session. It's gone on a little bit longer than I thought, but it's been a wonderful conversation.
I loved every minute of it.
Oh,
Phil.
George.
Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure to have it on, and we will be making references in the show notes to your book and recommending that, that people should read it. Indeed, I have it here, you know, by me, and we shall definitely be referencing this as recommended reading on our undergraduate sales program as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Phil. Much appreciated.
Okay, George. Have a great day. And
You
thank
too.
you.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheerio then. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good.
Is that okay?
That was great.